Good morning, Radio Disney families. It's that time again. Time for the Kids Concern Show with 98.3 FM Radio Disney. Let's hear what our local kidcasters have to share with us today.
Good morning. We are broadcasting from our Radio Disney studios in Carmel, Indiana. It's the Kids Concern Show with Radio Disney, and we are here to talk about matters that are important to Radio Disney families. I'm Bri, and I'm a Radio Disney Kidcaster.
And I'm Sarah, and I'm also a Radio Disney Kidcaster.
Today we have our special guest,
Bobby Susser.
How are you, Bobby?
Fine, thank you.
So one of the first questions we like to ask here at Radio Disney is, do you have a favorite Radio Disney star or singer?
I do enjoy watching the shows as I'm watching them with my kids. I've always been a fan of Disney.
Well, that's great to hear. So we know that you have many hit albums. How did you choose to get involved with writing children's music?
I wrote a song called Once You Understand and recorded it myself with a group of mine. It was an anti-drug song, and I was getting a lot of responses from teachers and clergymen, and I liked it. I not just liked the responses, but I thought this really makes some sense. I can always entertain with my songs, but if I can entertain and teach, it sure made a lot of sense to me. So because of that hit, and it was international, that did it for me. I said, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I've been doing since 1971, as I said.
So how do you think your songs affect the community?
I would never be that bold to say that they affect the community because it's just not for me to say that they do. I can say that I've tried to do that ever since I've begun doing this. But as an example where I try, and hopefully I've done this, but again I can't say for sure, I was asked to do an album that was multicultural at the time. Well, not at the time, but at the time, multicultural was requested of me, and I listened to a lot of multicultural songs and albums, and I was hearing I heard all these albums were songs that were sung in different languages, and I thought, I don't know if this is really multicultural to me. So the point I'm getting at is I wrote songs for an album, and the title of the album is We Are Better Together. So I'm encouraging togetherness. Another album that I've done is All Roads Lead to Home, with the strong belief that I've always had that everything starts in the home, and that's really the base of everything. Another album, Wiggle, Wiggle, and Other Exercises, which is a popular album of mine. It just encourages children to exercise. So all of my albums entertain, but they teach, and I hope that they follow and learn these lessons. I have another album. America was an album I did a couple of years ago. I thought it was about time I did a patriotic album. It was upbeat, but again, I thought that it was teaching something, and what it was teaching was I was just encouraging some enthusiasm in terms of patriotism. But I sure try, that's for sure.
So what are most of the lessons in some of your songs? Like, give us some ideas.
I did an album, can't think of the name of it offhand, but it was a very, very simple song within the album, and it was for young kids, and it's a song called It's Nice to Be Nice. It just says it all. It just says it all right there. Said it very simply, it's nice to be nice. And they got it. I try to keep the songs very simple. So my theory always has been keep the song simple so even non-singers amongst these children can sing the song.
Yeah, that's good. It's so that your listeners can understand and be able to take the messages from the songs. So you have a lot of good messages in your songs, and what do you hope that kids will take from them?
Well, I mean, my number one aim is, there are a number of aims, but my number one aim is to give kids confidence. And as I said before about plugging, I'm not here to plug any particular thing, but there's an article, and I'm not even sure where on my site it is. I don't really follow it that much. I just know it's bobbysusser.com. There's an article that I wrote, The Lollipop Theory, where what I do is I bring kids music that I'm recording, and I want their opinion as I'm recording it. I want their feedback. I want to see their responses. And one kid actually helped me to bring up a bass line in the song. And I believe this so strongly that he felt not just good, but I'm convinced that he was more confident. Maybe not in every area. He was a 6-year-old kid, but he was certainly more confident about the fact that, I can do this. I can tell him what's good and what's not, because he did. So I think that, that's probably the number one thing that I want to get across to them. I want them to feel confident. It's really, really important. We all know that. Whatever you're doing, if you feel confident, you'll be okay.
So you mentioned the lollipop music theory. Could you explain that a little bit more to our listeners?
Yeah, I would. The reason I didn't is because I didn't really want to take up more of your time.
Oh, no, it's okay. We're very interested to hear about it.
What I did was I went into a classroom and I was playing a song, and I think, I'm not 100% sure that it was a song called It's a Kid's World, but at any rate, I asked the kids to see what they thought of it, and I was convinced that they were going to get up and dance, but they didn't. Didn't just seem to be like there was no reaction. And one little kid raised his hand and he said, do you like it? And they were kind of, I thought, gee, boy, I really missed it on this one. And one kid raised his hand and he said, I don't hear the boom boom. I asked, what? He said, that boom boom? I really had no idea what he was talking about. And I said, well, I'm not sure what you mean. Well, to make a long story short, he was talking about the bass, and I raised the bass.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I titled this The Lollipop Theory is kids want things now, right now. They're not like adults where, that's coming, I'll wait. They want it now, like their dessert, right now. And he wanted to hear that bass line coming up at him, right at his face, quickly. And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to do this. The interesting part is when I went back to the recording studio and spoke with the engineer, and he asked me what I was doing today, I said, we're going to raise the bass. And he said, why? I think the levels are great. I said, yeah, well, this kid told me, and I told him the story, and he said to me, a 6-year-old kid told you this? And I reminded him, yeah, he's my audience, not you. And so that's what that theory was about. I mean, it was, again, I want it now. I don't want to wait. I want that boom, boom now. And that's why I said, see the article. I rarely say things like this. It's a really interesting article because it's very true.
Yeah, that's very good that you're responding to your audience. Bri, do you have another question for us?
How would you say that music has changed over the years, like children's music?
I think for one thing, it's a pretty crowded category, unlike before. And because there are a lot of really good children's artists out there. They have a lot of people who their rock and roll bands are not making it as they were, or they never did. And I've heard people say, I've literally heard them say, well, let's go into children's music because that should be easy. Well, the fact is it's not easy. It's hard work. The other thing is that's not a reason to go into something, as you know. You don't go into something just because it's easy. And I think also what's happened is I've gone to some concerts because it's what I do. I want to see what other people are doing. And I've noticed that people take their children very often to concerts where they like the artists and I don't know if the children dislike the artist. I would doubt it, but they like the artist, so they go there. And I've truly seen kids when some rock bands are playing for 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old kids. The kids are jumping out of their pants. They're scared. People are cranking up the amps. That's just not for kids. And so I think that it has to be kind of, well, certainly it's got to be age appropriate. Again, you come back to the simple songs. The simple songs are really necessary for them. Doesn't mean that they're bad songs. I was very lucky. I listened to my music that I grew up with in the '60s, and it's good. It's melodic. It's rhythmic, but it's simple also. And I kind of lean in that area. I think that I just think that as I said, it's a crowded category, which can be fine, but I'm not sure it's thought out as much, and I'm not sure that the teaching element there is really in the foreground. I think that it's let's rock and roll for these kids. As a matter of fact, many people call it now family music. And I'm not so sure it is family music. I think that it's almost like you're robbing little kids of their music. If you can have different categories for adults, like rhythm and blues and folk and classical, you can have different categories for kids depending upon the age group. I mean, certainly a 14-year-old kid is not going to listen to what I'm doing. Unless it's unless I've done something a little bit more advanced. But for the most part, I'm not aiming at that kid. And I think it should just be, if you're gonna do some rock and roll, then do it. And if you can't, if it's not happening, keep trying. It's really that simple. So I think that again, there's just too much of incompetence. It's really that simple. I hesitated to say that, but I'm going to say it. And I think that also, there's a technological problem here for all of us, everybody. We listen to songs now on iPods, so you're not going to hear real quality, and so often there's not real quality. It's not like you're listening to it on these big speakers and saying, can I hear every little piece here now? No, you can't. So, I mean, there are some people who still incorporate it, and if you don't hear it, you don't hear it. If you play it on a big speaker, you play it on a big speaker. So, therefore, I think it depends upon, again, the artist. But that's my feeling about today's, the elements of simplicity have left. It seems to me, if you watch artists today, young children's artists, it seems as though they're playing to older people, and they're not really connecting. I know 2 artists I could think of who connect very well. I don't know if you know them. The Battersby duo. They've been out there a long time. They're really good, and they connect. If you see the expression on the kids' faces, you know instantly that's it. And there's a young girl I think she's out of Philadelphia. I heard her last year, Meg Russell. She's really good. And she's kind of up and coming. And when you see the kids in her audience, you could see the expression on their faces. But when you see what I mentioned, when some of these bands crank it up, the kids literally look frightened.
Okay, that's great. I understand how you have to be age appropriate and everything. So as you mentioned, simplicity is something that you like to include in your songs. But as a songwriter, what elements do you think should exist in a children's song?
I think that you need, it's pretty simple. Simplicity is clear to me, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that it's kind of a dumb song. It's not at all. Simplicity, a nice melody, and some rhythm, and you've got them. And whatever you want to teach is going to get there. It's going to get through to them. I hope that people want to teach them, but I'm listening to a lot of the new songs, and a lot of them don't have that element. So I guess I would add, the teaching factor. But the simplicity and the melody and the rhythm are the three major factors.
I read that you've sold over 5 million albums. Did you expect for your music to be so popular?
Well, I guess as people like yourselves, I hoped it would. I hoped. I couldn't say I expected. I thought, this is pretty good. And in the beginning, I really wasn't sure. But as I would go along, and as I go along today, I know that what I do, I can feel when it's good. I say, well, I'm onto something. Because when it is it hits you. You know that it's right. But again, in answer to the core of this question, you can't predict. An old publisher once said to me years ago, I once asked him, I gave him a song before I was publishing my songs. I gave him a song, and I asked him, he had it recorded by a very popular artist in England, and I said, do you think it's a hit? And he said, I always know what a good song is, but nobody knows what a hit is. And I've come to believe that completely.
You've been recognized for your accomplishment through multiple awards. Is there one in particular that means the most to you?
It's the award that I received from Columbia University last month, because many times when you receive an award, not always, but many times, either you're submitting or your management people or your publicity people are sending in submissions, and so therefore they've got it and they'll listen to it and weed it out that way. But this came out of nowhere. I just received a letter, and it stated, you've been chosen to receive the Distinguished 2013 Alumni Award for your life's work. And I thought, oh my God. And I really thought it was a joke. Not a joke, ha-ha. I said, there's something, maybe I'm misreading this. So it's that one. And it's those type that means something to me. Because it's kind of like, you know what it's like? It's like, I heard an old line most recently, and you may have heard the line. It's not an original. It's not my line, but I heard it so true. Success is not the flavor of the month. It's longevity, and how you feel about how you made this trip, and that's what those type of awards and that particular one says to me.
That's very exciting. Well, you have shared so much with us today, and thank you so much for coming on air with Radio Disney and telling our listeners about your children's songs. If our listeners would like more information about Bobby Susser, they can go online to bobbysusser.com. On behalf of Radio Disney and our listeners, I want to give a big extraordinary thank you to our special guest, Bobby Susser, for teaching us all about his children's songs. And as always, thank you to our Radio Disney listeners for getting up and tuning in to the Kids Concern show. For more information about Radio Disney, ask your parents for permission to check out radiodisney.com. Thank you so much, and hopefully we will see you next week bright and early with Radio Disney 98.3 FM for the Kids Concern show.
Thanks for listening to the Kids Concern Show. Join us again next Saturday morning right here on the only radio station for families, 98.3 FM, Radio Disney.